Atlanta International Airport. 1964. A Pan Am Boeing 707 sits on the tarmac.
A pilot in full uniform walks through the terminal. Navy blue jacket with 4 gold stripes. A Pan Am ID badge clipped to his chest. Gate agents step aside. Flight attendants smile. Security waves him through the checkpoint. He boards the plane without question.
He takes his seat in the jump seat. The crew doesn't question him at all.
Why would they? He's wearing the uniform. He has the credentials and confidence.
He is 16 years old. His name is Frank Abagnale. And he has never flown a plane. Not a single time in his life.
Over the next 5 years, Frank Abagnale will fly over 1 million miles for free.
She will cash more than $2.5 million in fraudulent checks across 26 countries.
He will practice medicine without a license, pass the Louisiana bar exam, and become the most hunted imposter in FBI history, all before his 21st birthday.
This is the story of a male teenager with no technical training, no credentials. By the end, you'll need to ask yourself a question the FBI is still wrestling with. How much was real?
First, you need to understand the target. It wasn't a building or a vault.
The target was the uniform. The symbolic power of the uniform itself. In the 1960s, airline pilots held a special place. They were the astronauts of the civilian world.
Trusted, authoritative, above suspicion. Their very presence commanded respect.
A Pan Am captain walked through airports the way a priest walks through a church. Nobody asked questions or demanded verification. The uniform itself was the credential. Pan Am was the prestige carrier of its era, the airline of diplomats and executives.
It was the airline of celebrities. Flying Pan Am was a profound statement.
Its pilots were treated accordingly, with deference and unquestioning trust. Hotels gave them discounts without asking. Banks cashed their checks with minimal scrutiny. Restaurants comped their meals. The uniform was a skeleton key. It opened almost every door in American commercial life. The aviation industry in 1964 had no centralized database. Airlines verified through phone calls and paper. A forged ID didn't need a digital scan. It needed to survive 30 seconds of visual inspection by an agent with 20 other tasks.
The system wasn't exactly broken. It simply never imagined someone like Frank. But here's the first question. Who exactly was Frank Abagnale?
How does a 16-year-old from Bronxville end up in a Pan Am uniform at Atlanta Airport?
His father, Frank Sr., ran a stationery store. His mother was French. By all accounts, the household was comfortable. Middle class, organized, unremarkable.
Frank Jr. showed early aptitude for reading people. By age 15, he was running a small scam, selling gas to attendants for cash, and pocketing the difference himself. His father eventually discovered it. He did not report it to the police. He simply absorbed the financial loss. a choice with lasting implications. Then, in 1963, his parents divorced. Frank Jr. was just 15 years old. He was given a choice by the court: live with his mother or his father.
He ran away from it all instead, into the unknown, alone.
He arrived in New York City with almost nothing. Within weeks, his checking account was empty. 16 years old, alone and struggling. Nobody would hire someone his age, or any job that paid enough to survive. So he started thinking about what he had.
He had height, 6 feet tall at 16. He also had striking looks. He had the ability to project calm authority in almost any given situation.
Inherited from early card games with his father, an instinct for what people wanted to see.
And he had noticed something important. When he told people he was older, they believed him.
Not because the lie was technically convincing, but because he delivered it with total confidence.
The uniform came next in his plan. He later described calling Pan Am scheduling, claiming to be a pilot whose uniform was damaged, asking which vendor they used for supplies. He called the vendor and ordered the uniform, using a corporate account number he'd memorized. The invoice went to Pan Am Accounting, where it disappeared into paperwork.
He had the uniform in hand within a week, the first piece of his grand deception.
The ID was more technical to forge, but it was 1964. IDs were simple.
Printed cards with simple photographs. Abagnale obtained a genuine Pan Am badge.
Used a chemical process in her bathroom to lift the laminate with precision. Replace the photograph, then relaminate. Produced a document that passed inspection.
The process took patience and several failed attempts. But the chemistry wasn't complicated. It required acetone, a heat source, incredibly steady hands.
The FAA pilot's license was similarly constructed. He obtained a blank form for it.
He typed in the relevant details carefully, sourced an official-looking seal through novelty printing.
The service asked no inconvenient questions. The result looked exactly like the real thing.
Because it was built from the same visual template. A perfect illusion of authority. Everything was ready. The uniform, the badge, the license, the backstory. First Officer Frank Williams.
Except for one thing. He still had to walk through that door. The first time, he had no idea if it would work.
He stands outside Atlanta International. The uniform is on. The badge is clipped.
The bag packed with pilot's items. Her heart rate, 140 beats per minute. He walks in, approaching the Pan Am desk. He tells the agent he's dead heading to Miami.
And needs a jump seat on the next available flight. The agent checks the schedule meticulously.
Looks at his badge, then his face. Looks back at the flight schedule.
She prints his travel authorization.
He doesn't run, doesn't smile too wide. He walks calmly to the gate and boards. He sits in the jump seat as before.
The actual pilots talk to him briefly. He uses memorized aviation terminology.
The conversation is short and unremarkable. Nobody is suspicious of his presence.
wheels leave the ground, he is flying. He is not actually flying the plane.
16 years old, in the cockpit, with a forged uniform and identity. Not a single person on board knows it. That was just the first of hundreds more.
The check fraud runs parallel. Far more significant. Abagnale opens bank accounts in many cities,
Using variations of his pilot identity. A pilot with Pan Am salary has a plausible reason.
He deposits checks drawn on accounts in other cities, a process called check kiting, exploiting float time. During that window, money exists in two places. They withdraw against it before fraud is detected. He's already in another city and long gone, before the bank ever even notices.
He also began manufacturing checks directly, using the same chemical process from ID badges.
He modifies genuine checks with precision, lifting routing numbers from real documents,
and replacing them to redirect funds through complex intermediary accounts.
Modifications done in hotel bathrooms with commercially available chemicals.
No specialized equipment, no printing press, just patience and chemistry applied. Bank tellers in 1964 were not trained to detect this particular kind of fraud. By his own estimate, he cashed checks across 26 countries over 5 years.
The total, approximately $2.6 million. Equivalent to 25 million in today's power.
But here's where it truly gets complicated. The pilot persona wasn't enough to sustain fraud.
So she diversified her elaborate scams. In Georgia, she obtained a Harvard-stamped resume.
Talked his way into a residency at an Atlanta hospital, practicing as pediatrician Dr. Frank Connors.
For 11 months, he maintained the deception. He admitted he made almost no clinical decisions,
routing anything medical to nurses and interns, while maintaining the authority of the title. In Louisiana, he talked his way into a law firm, an apprenticeship at a prestigious firm.
Passed the state bar exam on his third attempt. Worked as an attorney, flunk, legally this time.
The bar itself was a legitimate credential. For approximately 2 years, he practiced law,
Before a colleague from Harvard Law began asking questions about mutual acquaintances they shared.
he swiftly left before questions became formal, vanishing into the unseen once more.
The FBI opened a file on him in 1967. Special Agent Joseph Shea was assigned.
Abagnale had been flagged by 7 airlines, 4 banks in 3 countries, 2 licensing boards.
The challenge for investigators: geographical coherence. Fraud spread across so many jurisdictions, in so many names, a complete picture took years. No single decisive database existed then.
There was no digital trail whatsoever.
Stacks of paper records in filing cabinets across 4 distinct time zones. A monumental task for any agent. Shea described Abagnale as the most difficult fugitive in his entire 30-year career. Not because he was violent or used technology, but because he understood institutions
better than the institutions understood themselves, exploiting their blind spots and assumptions.
Recognized him from an Interpol circular. She contacted authorities immediately.
French police arrested him at his apartment. The chase was finally at its end.
He is just 21 years old, extradited after 6 months in French prison.
A prison so overcrowded, conditions inhumane. No light, limited food, and no exercise. His attorneys describe the conditions as brutal, reportedly in poor physical health for extradition.
In the United States, charged with fraud. Across multiple states, a harsh sentence.
A Hispanic man served 4 years of a 12-year sentence at Federal Correctional Institution in Petersburg.
Before the FBI released him early. Under a truly unusual arrangement.
Agreed to work with federal agencies for free, helping combat the check fraud he pioneered. He built a second career on that arrangement, a successful consulting business.
A best-selling book of his story. A Steven Spielberg film in 2002.
He lectured at corporations and banks for decades, and law enforcement agencies worldwide.
He became, arguably, the most famous reformed con artist in American history, a true legend.
And then, in 2019, a journalist named Alan Logan published a detailed, critical investigation that raised a fundamental, unsettling question. How much of his story actually happened?
Logan's research, cross-referencing prison records and airline employment databases.
State bar records and FBI files revealed nothing. No documentation supporting dramatic claims. No record of Abagnale as a Pan Am pilot in FAA. No Louisiana State Bar record for any alias.
Atlanta hospital, no record of his employment. His actual criminal record involves only check fraud.
No mention of aviation or medical impostures. The documented truth is far simpler. Two theories exist about what this means. Theory 1, records were never filed correctly, or have been expunged or simply lost. Not impossible given 1960s documentation.
Theory 2. Abagnale continued conning, built a persona more spectacular than reality.
Sold it to a publisher, then to Hollywood. Built a multi-million-dollar consulting career.
On a biography that was, in substantial part, fiction. A grand, profitable fabrication.
What is documented, without any dispute, is that an East Asian male committed extensive check fraud. Across multiple states, he was convicted. He did serve time in federal prison.
He did subsequently work directly with the FBI. The specific dollar amounts were very real.
The broader framework of his crimes is real. These facts stand without question. But the pilot, the doctor, the attorney, and 1 million miles of free flights remain.
3 theories explain the gap in records. 1, he's telling the truth. Records don't exist.
2, he fabricated cinematic elements to sell a book. 3, some happened, some didn't in his memory.
Frank Abagnale Jr., now in his mid-70s. He still maintains his full account is true.
He pushed back against Logan, claiming records expunged. The FBI has never confirmed or denied that claim.